This is Covering the Spread, part of the FanDuel Podcast Network.
The Baltimore Ravens now 4-1 to win the Super Bowl this year after their dismantling of the San Francisco 49ers on Monday Night Football. And we're going to break down whether or not there is still value in the Ravens at that number by talking to Ryan Williams for today, getting his read on the Ravens, talking some MVP market with how things moved in a significant fashion last night, and talk other futures he likes entering Week 17. Then I'll dig into Week 17 and outline where my models show value at FanDuel Sportsbook. This is Covering the Spread right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and FanDuel Research. My name is Jim Sanas. I am a managing editor of digital media for FanDuel Research, joined here as I am every Tuesday by Ryan Williams. Check him out on Twitter at RyanAlexander_W. Ryan, happy holidays to you. How was your Christmas this past week?
Oh, happy holidays to you as well, Jim. It was great. Got to celebrate birthday with the little guy. That's 3 days before Christmas. So what can go wrong? No, it was a fun time, lots of travel, but it was good. It was, a nice little holiday reprieve, and now we get back to it. So, that's what's on tap for us this week. How about yourself?
Not too bad. A little bit of a bummer with the way the game went last night to not get a more back and forth kind of affair. Would have been a nice topper on all things, but hey, you get to put the game on a second screen, put on Rudolph or whatever it is on the main TV. That's not the worst trade-off in the world by any means either. So it all wound up being pretty good on this end as well. We're going to dig into implications of that game because things moved in a pretty significant fashion based on what we saw last night, especially in the MVP market, which we'll dive into here in just 1 second. But first, a reminder to make sure you're subscribed to Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcasts. Just 3 shows coming up for this week on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We'll still have Primetime Tom to get you ready for the Thursday night game as well. So technically 4 shows, but either way, you can find those right here in the Covering the Spread podcast feed and find the regular shows on the FanDuel YouTube page and FanDuel TV Plus. Tomorrow, Dr. Ed Feng will be with us. We'll be talking about the college football playoff semifinals, and then our full NFL Week 17 preview will be coming up on Thursday. And again, I'll talk Week 17 and where my models show value later on today. Let's begin things, though, Ryan, by talking about the Super Bowl market, because right now the Ravens are 4-1 to win at FanDuel Sportsbook, second only to the San Francisco 49ers, who are plus 240, and the Ravens are short significantly. So I do want to ask whether or not you still see value in that number, or is there potentially value elsewhere, given the 49ers did look a bit vulnerable in that game last night?
Yeah, 4-1 for the Ravens seems feasible at this point. You take care of business against a San Fran team who's the upper echelon of the NFC. The way the defense is playing is just absolutely incredible. And I know not all these interceptions that Brock Purdy had were necessarily his fault, with a lot of drop passes, tip passes, what have you, but they're just so opportunistic. And the way that they're playing right now is just absolutely otherworldly. So, on the offensive side of the ball, like Lamar just doesn't even, they don't have to do, as much, because the defense is setting them up in such prime field position. So, when you're looking at, potentially them hosting everybody, in Baltimore, when it comes down to it, we'll have a key matchup in Week 17 against the Miami Dolphins. Like, I want to see them take care of business against Miami. They're favored. It's always with Baltimore, it's always a crapshoot, because I feel like they show up in the games that they aren't favored when they're underdogs, and then when they are favored, they end up putting out lame ducks. So if they handle business against Miami, I think that'll be, we'll even get shorter odds on Baltimore. If they were to lose to Miami, I think that kind of opens things up for you to potentially get the Ravens closer to where the Miami Dolphins number is potentially. Right. But yeah, in the AFC, you love Baltimore. Like, absolutely. I still have a little bit of faith in Miami, just because of how explosive this offense has been. And I know they've been reeling as of late, but, I think they have a chance to get back into the mix with a win against Baltimore this week. And then if they can handle business against the Bills in week 18, which is not, it's been a tough feat for them in the Josh Allen era, but, definitely love Baltimore. I don't really, outside of those teams, like Kansas City's tough to try and trust at plus 850 right now. I mean, they just do not, they look like they're just reeling, and they are in a tough spot. I think it'll be interesting to see Pat Mahomes go on the road in Kansas City. And I think we can definitely get some value on the Chiefs, as they get on the path to the Super Bowl. If you do have faith in them, I would more so lean on that. I still think in the NFC though, we're not giving Philly enough credit. I know they were on a 3-game skid, but 8-1 compared to plus 240 there for San Francisco 49ers. Like I still kind of believe in Philly as well too. So, they've had a tough run here, and, the Giants always play them competitively. So I'm not going to put any merit on that, but if we're getting 8-1 compared to plus 240 for San Fran, I'm going to jump on that number right now.
Yeah, I was honestly a bit disappointed we didn't get the Niners a bit longer. I thought that, tough night last night. They didn't play very well on like you said, it was a lot of flukiness in the way things broke down. Like that first drive, they moved the ball with ease, long completions to Kittle and stuff like that. And I thought they looked pretty good there. And then all the picks kind of add up, things spiral. Trent Williams gets hurt, Brock Purdy gets hurt, and I'm willing to write that off for the most part. Their defense was still very banged up in that game. So I thought we might get a better number than plus 240. We're not. And I don't think it'll get a lot better as the year goes along, because they get the Commanders this week where they're 13.5-point favorites. And then week 18, another soft matchup there as well. So I was hoping we might get a better number than plus 240 on them, because I think they're the team that I'm most interested in buying still, but I haven't gotten that great number yet. So keeping tabs on them, that maybe because I've got a Ravens plus 950 one, so I'm like kind of okay just letting that one ride for the Ravens. I think 4-1's fair, and not to the point where I'm like leaping to grab it. But I think that honestly right now the market's pretty good, and honestly, like outside of those two, I don't see a whole lot that I like. I do still find the Bills pretty interesting at 11-1. Yeah. It's not a long number. We'll talk about the Bills in a second, but I think that if you were to like force me to take one right now, which you can't, I would probably lean towards the Bills. But honestly, it's a pretty efficient market with where things stand. We'll talk about the Bills here in a second as well. But first, let's talk about the MVP market, because prior to last night, Brock Purdy was minus 200 to be the MVP. It's now Lamar Jackson minus 170, Christian McCaffrey plus 450, and then it drops all the way down to Tua Tagovailoa at 10-1. Purdy is now 13-1 to win the award after that showing last night. I want to ask you, Ryan, because I feel like, to me, the case for Lamar Jackson, if you watch him from like an actual like football watching perspective, like, yeah, he could be MVP for sure. But if I'm making that case, I can make the same case for Dak Prescott. Like, he's not going to fit the traditional mold of MVP, because they're not going to get the 1 seed and stuff like that. But like, it's weird because Jackson's counting stats are like really underwhelming for an MVP, but it seems like the narrative is kind of built around him. So I want to go somewhere else at MVP, given he's minus 170, but I don't know where to go. So help me, Ryan. Where can we find value in the MVP market right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think Lamar did enough last night to, warrant this. I understand where you're coming from, Jim. I think what it comes down to is, when you look at the Ravens' outlook over the past couple of years, it's been, Lamar being banged up. We've talked about that a lot. Like, he's had potential for comeback player of the year, the way he's carried this offense. You get J.K. Dobbins going down, a couple other running backs in the mix going down, and he's still able to make it work with Mark Andrews, again, not being there. And you're like looking at it, and this team is at the top of the AFC, like compared to all of these juggernauts. Like, how does this guy not deserve MVP based off of that? Because we know how hard it is to win in this league for these guys, and he just keeps on doing it with with a rookie wide receiver who's leading the way, and with his legs yet again. So it does seem fair. I do think it is interesting when you look at a guy like Tua, right, who had kind of been like the talk of the town for, a couple of weeks earlier on in the season. It was because they weren't playing against anybody. That's why they were winning, yada, yada, yada. But, he has a chance to go into Baltimore. I believe that game's in Baltimore in week 17. He wins that game. Then you're looking at, potentially playing against the Bills, who they have not, had success against in the Josh Allen era. At 10-1, like Tua seems pretty feasible as well, because the Dolphins have been such an explosive offense. It's the same type of thing with Lamar. This market, and it's crazy, Jim, because we talked about this for every week now for 17 weeks, and it's just, the way that it's kind of fluctuated, and it seems like this. It's like, no, like you got to still be trying to get in on these numbers, because it can change just on a dime, like the Brock Purdy performance. Is one for somebody who's leading the MVP market, but yeah, I think Lamar should be favored. I do think they're into. I said a couple weeks ago I didn't think there was any way that Josh Allen could do enough to get back into the mix. I mean, maybe he could. I thought the best chance for them is to win the division, and that's still a potential. So, I guess we still got to look at Josh Allen there. Dak Prescott, the Cowboys they've just been up and down. I feel like even remotely be able to take a shot, on the guy there. And then everybody else is kind of out of the mix. Christian McCaffrey would have been interesting had he, had a multi-score game, lead them back to victory. It's because of McCaffrey. Like that really could have been a merit for running back winning this award for the first time in years. But yeah, I think the way the market stands right now, you got to look at these AFC quarterbacks to be able to take home hardware.
I agree. I think the value McCaffrey dried up last week, during the week, because he was 16-1 when we talked on Tuesday last week. I took it there personally, and he's down to plus 450. He kind of shortened throughout the week. I think he was around 11-1 or so by the time games kicked off for this week. So definitely got interest last week in McCaffrey, but I think at plus 450, that's pretty much gone. So I agree with you. Where if you're looking at dabbling right now, I would skew towards those AFC quarterbacks who you highlighted. Now, you mentioned the Buffalo Bills. Let's talk about them, because right now they are plus 290 to win the AFC East. The Dolphins are minus 350. And basically what you need here is you need the Dolphins to lose both to the Ravens this week and then to the Bills next week. And you also need the Bills to beat the Patriots, but they are heavy favorites in that game, not surprisingly. So when you look at this market, you're effectively doing a three scenario parlay. Bills win out, Dolphins lose out. So any interest in you, Ryan, there in the Bills at plus 290, or do you even have faith in the Dolphins against the Ravens and against the Bills the following week to stay away from that one?
Yeah, I mean, I think how many times have we talked about this team, Jim? It's just so hilarious that we're in this position. As somebody who has a future, Bills make the playoffs ticket, when things were looking as bleak as they were possibly looking for the Bills earlier this year. They've done everything to make a name for themselves, so to speak, here in this market. And this is not out of the foregone conclusion that they win the division, which is why you see the odds at where they are. I mean, I do think that the value personally has dried up on the Bills, and I would be looking for longer shot futures for the Bills here. Like, they're 5-1 to be the AFC champion winner. I think there's, definitely some merit to be able to take them there, especially if things work out to where they win the division and, can get in the mix there. I think, even if you're looking at Super Bowl, like to take them at, I believe, 11-1. Yeah, 11-1 to win the Super Bowl. As well, that's where the value still stands. I mean, the AFC East picture, like, can Miami go into Baltimore and beat Baltimore? Sure. I think, the Bills definitely have the Dolphins numbers, so I will be taking the Bills in week 18, most definitely. So, I think that as far as it goes, like, yeah, maybe it should be shorter, for the Bills to potentially win the division there. If you want to dabble on that, I think that's fine, but I still think there's better opportunities to get in on the Bills, because if they do win the East, these numbers, market and in the Super Bowl market are going to shorten immensely. So that's kind of where I come in on the Bills. I mean, especially week 18, like Josh Allen, I believe he's 9-2 against the Dolphins in his career. He's got, I'm not even going to throw out the touchdowns there. I think 33 touchdowns and 5 rushing something crazy. Like he's absolutely dominated those performances. So yeah, all you need is the Ravens to handle business. And then you're sitting pretty, I feel like, with that bet.
And I think one thing that kind of got overlooked in this one is that the news broke last night that Jalen Waddle has a high ankle sprain. And we've seen quarterbacks play on those, like Trevor Lawrence and Patrick Mahomes, but like it's a lot tougher for a receiver to do so than a quarterback. And obviously they still have Tyreek Hill, but he's also not at 100% right now. The offensive line getting healthier, which is a good thing for the Dolphins for sure. Maybe they can lean on that ground game to try to beat the Ravens, but that does hurt their odds of being the Ravens, and it does hurt them against the Bills because that's probably going to be a multi-week thing for Jalen Waddle if it is indeed a high ankle as was reported. So I think there is some value in the Bills of plus 290, but I also agree with you where maybe you want to lean less on those circumstances and take a look at them in upside markets because like they are an upside kind of team. So I don't think that's a terrible way to look at things here when it comes to the Buffalo Bills. One team, Ryan, we are not discussing as far as whether they'll make the playoffs because they've solidified themselves there is the Cleveland Browns. Joe Flacco slinging it right now. And it's led the Browns to be pretty safe as far as a wild card. And it's also making me question when you combine an offense that's looked okay with that defense, are you considering the Browns in more upside markets, like to win the AFC, to win the Super Bowl, anything like that? Or is that a bit too optimistic given that it is still Joe Flacco and we've seen a lot of backup quarterbacks have a good couple weeks span before they come back to earth later on?
Yeah, Jim. I mean, I don't want to sit here and let the covering the spread community call me a fraud because I have not been on the Browns all year. So for me to be able to flip flop like that all of a sudden would not be truthful to the brand. But yeah, they've been incredible. I mean, there's no doubt about it. You hit it right on the head. Like, you have an opportunistic defense, one of the best defenses that's been in this league for a majority, if not the course of the season. This defense has absolutely been carrying the team. And then you get in a situation to where it's not your second string, it's not your third string, it's actually your quarterback who to come in here, who's a championship quarterback. I think Joe Flacco, knows what he needs to do to win. He's kind of not moved from being out of the league here. And it's Believeland. I think Cleveland does believe that they belong in any conversation, with some of these, the way the defense has been playing. And, if they're able to, come in to the playoffs and make some noise, I even think, winning a playoff game for them would be huge for the city, huge for this team, just considering on what the dynamic been with this team. You lose Nick Chubb, you have Deshaun Watson, highest paid quarterback, who doesn't seem to be working out, but you get this guy who by the way played within your division for years. Joe Flacco was at the Ravens taking business to the Cleveland Browns and has caused them a lot of pain over the years. So for him to be the one, potentially leading them to the promised land is just so ironic. But yeah, I mean, this is what the market's about though, Jim. If people have a good read on Cleveland here, you take a shot on them. I mean, 20-1, to be the AFC championship. I think when we're talking about some of these other, scenarios, like how wide open is it? I think the NFC still, like, we got 49ers, we got Eagles. I firmly believe that those are the two best teams. Like, I tried to give Dallas some love in Detroit there, but I just think those are the two best teams. When we're looking at the other side of the AFC, like, yeah, the Ravens have been the best team, and I think their defense. But all of these teams here, like, except for Jacksonville, who I'm never going to give any love to because they just annoy the heck out of me. You got, what is that, 5 teams? Like 5 teams in the mix where it's like man, yeah, like we could see this like pretty much going any way with how the season's played out. And that's what really makes it exciting. I'm so excited for the AFC playoffs this year because, it's not just the Chiefs and, everybody else. It's all of these teams being in the mix and just having a chance. And Cleveland could find themselves in that same, scenario where they just have a chance and can go in and make some noise. So yeah, I'll support anybody who takes them. It just won't be me with how I've read this team all year.
I don't blame you. And I do think that Flacco will regress. So I'm not expecting the offense to keep doing what it has been doing because it's Joe Flacco. He was pretty inefficient when he played with the Jets last year as well. It is a Flacco revenge game against those Jets this week. So that's a positive. But I do expect regression there. I think that defense, though, will keep them in games at least. That's worth something. So 20-1 to win the AFC, interesting. Not something I'm taking now, but it's interesting just given how good that defense is. But I agree with you, Ryan, where I expect the offense to come back to earth a bit in maybe not like this week, because I know it's the Jets defense, but I think long term, maybe we can find some value in betting against the Browns because the Flacco hype train is definitely chugging along right now. Any other futures you're looking to grab before we get to week 17, Ryan?
Yeah, not currently at this time, just with where the market's still coming in at and shaping up. But I am curious to see where the offensive player of the year market, comes in at. I think some of the other ones, have definitely been shored up for quite some time. But yeah, I think there are going to be some interesting things that rear its head before week 17, and I can't wait to get after them. But yeah, for me right now, it does come on Bills futures in the conference and Super Bowl market as it stands right now, because I think those odds will be will be shorter when we get closer to playoff and wild card season.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun one for sure. And like you said, AFC playoffs are going to be a delight this year. That is Ryan Williams. Check him out on Twitter at RyanAlexander_W. Ryan, appreciate the time as always. Enjoy the rest of your week. We'll talk to you once again next Tuesday to talk about futures entering week 18 already.
I know. So crazy. Yeah. Happy holidays to you and yours, Jim, and all the Cover and the Spread fam. And we'll catch you next time.
All righty. Thank you as always. That is Ryan Williams. Find him on Twitter again at RyanAlexander_W. I'm going to take a look at week number 17 and outline where I see value across the spreads and totals this week at FanDuel Sportsbook in just 1 second. But first, score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there is no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There is a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, totals, and more. So visit FanDuel and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino LLC. First online real money wager only. $5 pregame moneyline wager required. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG in Colorado, Iowa, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Virginia. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342 in Arizona. 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut. 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana. 1-800-522-4700. Visit ksgamblinghealth.com in Kansas. 1-877-770-STOP in Louisiana. Visit mdgamblinghealth.org in Maryland. 1-800-GAMBLER.net in West Virginia. 1-800-522-4700 in Wyoming. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Let's take a look now at the Week 17 spreads, money lines, and totals and outline where my model is showing value for this week at FanDuel Sportsbook. Let's begin things off in Chicago, where the Falcons are heading to Chicago, take on the Bears. Right now, the Bears are 3-point favorites at FanDuel Sportsbook, and I do show a bit of value on the Falcons here, and I want to make that a layered bet with some on the spread at +3 at -115 and on the money line where the Falcons are +136 to win this game. Let's talk about why we're here first before outlining thoughts on the spread and the money line. A bit of it is Taylor Heineke. They've played pretty well with him at quarterback so far this year. Heineke, across his various stints at quarterback, is at 0.15 passing net expected points per dropback. League average is 0.07. Desmond Ridder is at negative 0.01. Now, does that mean Heineke is an upgrade from Ridder and we should expect him to play at that clip? No. Heineke has a very large sample as a quarterback, and it's never been hyper efficient. So, not projecting to do what he's done thus far. But I also think we can say it's probably not a huge downgrade to go from Ridder to Heineke. And in fact, last week, throughout the week, we saw the market move towards the Falcons in that matchup with the Colts, where the Colts were initially, I believe, like minus 110 in the money line. They closed around minus one or plus 130 or so in that matchup. So the market had faith in Heineke a bit there, whatever else it may have been. And the numbers do kind of back that up. So again, I don't think it's a huge upgrade from Ridder, but I also don't view it as being a massive downgrade for them. They're facing a Bears defense that has been much, much better since they added Montez Sweat at the trade deadline, but the Bears have also benefited from a lot of good matchups against pretty poor quarterback play in that time. Now, the Falcons are under that umbrella too, so it's not a deviation from what the Bears have faced, but I think the overall takeaway is we shouldn't over adjust for what the Bears defense has done over the past couple of weeks. My model tends to hate Atlanta. Like, I've bet against them a lot this year, including this past week, which did not go very well. So when my model shows value in them, I'm pretty willing to trust it, given that it typically is not a huge fan of them. So that's why, in general, I am on the Falcons in this game. As for the money line, the implied odds at plus 136 are 42.4%. So, and I've got this as basically a toss-up right now. If you wanted to go just money line, no spread, I'm not going to push back on that at all. The reason I'm inclined to do a little bit of both is because we're getting 3 points in a game with a low total, and there is pretty heavy wind projected in Chicago right now. 12-mile-per-hour winds. I've got the total here at 36.9, so a bit below 37, which to me says if you can get points in a low total game where you agree with the low total, probably should take that. So that's why I'm inclined to take the points and layer this thing where I profit if the Falcons cover and then get a bit more upside should they win the game outright. That's my approach to this Falcons-Bears game, taking the Falcons plus 3 at minus 115, layered with their money line at plus 136. Again, if you want to take just the money line by itself or just the points, that's totally fair. That's why I'm going the direction I am, given the total in this game. Second money line or spread for me is going to be in the Sunday night football game between the Packers and the Vikings. Right now, the Packers money line is plus 110 taking on the Vikings, and I want to go that direction in large part because of how banged up the Vikings are right now. Not only do they not have TJ Hawkinson or not have Kirk Cousins, but they're also going to be without TJ Hawkinson in this game. Jordan Addison likely out as well, and that's a lot of losses. And the Vikings, to their credit, to Kevin O'Connell's credit, have played very well through all their injuries this year. But at some point, when you have cluster injuries to the passing offense, the most important aspect of the NFL and trying to project how things will go going forward, that's going to catch up to you at some point. So I'm expecting some downticks here for the Vikings offense. Nick Mullins is chaotic in not the good way. And you would take away some weapons for him. I don't think that's going to go super, super well. As for the Packers, they should be healthier this week than they were in their pretty tough near loss to the Panthers. Neither Jaden Reed nor Christian Watson was officially ruled out before that game, which implies to me there's at least a chance they're able to get back out there for this week. And Luke Musgrave could too, got back to practice this past week on Thursday, didn't play on Sunday, but maybe next week for him. And if we get Watson, Reed, and Musgrave in this game, this Packers offense could be pretty good against a very good Vikings defense. Now, the Packers defense, it's an abomination. It's terrible. It's hideous. And it's the biggest concern for me in taking them to win this game. But with the Vikings offense being as banged up as it is, it's hard to tell if they'll be able to take advantage of that poor defense. I've got the Packers again as slight favorites in this game. So you give me plus 110 the money line. It's a pretty attractive offer. So I will take the Packers to win this game outright, plus 110 on Sunday Night Football, given I'm expecting the Vikings passing offense to regress, given all their injuries. Respect the defense a lot, but I think in this spot, we do want to go towards the Packers plus 110 on the money line. As far as totals for this week, there are a couple where I'm showing value. One of them is for the Bills-Patriots game, and I think you could go with the spread in this one for the Bills. Right now, the Bills are minus 11.5 at FanDuel Sportsbook at minus 112. You could consider that. I'm very open to that personally. But I also think the better bet here is the total, because 11.5 is between a couple of key numbers. So it's kind of in a weird zone. And I've got value in the total. Part of the reason I show value in the total is because I show value in the Bills spread. I've got this at 44.3, which is a good chunk above 40.5. So I think the better route for buying into the Bills here and fading the Patriots defense is to take the over for the game at 40.5 at minus 110. Weather in Buffalo looks pretty good relative to most December games. Temperature above freezing, just 9-mile-per-hour winds. That's not too bad. And that should allow these offenses to operate at pretty full capacity. Neither defense has been one to write home about so far this year. They've been fine, but not outlandish. And the Bills have shown they can generate explosive plays, whether they decide to lean on the run or on the pass. Pace in this game is middling, so it's nothing to drag things down too much. When you combine everything together, I don't see a lot of red flags toward my betting the over in this game. We get a win on a key number of 41. The Bills could get to 41 by themselves, honestly, at some point. So my preferred route to exposure to the Bills in this spot is to take the game over 40.5, which is minus 110 at FanDuel Sportsbook. I think that's a very fair number. Again, you could go with the spread at minus 11.5 and minus 112. But I think for me, the game total over 40.5 is the preferred route to betting the Bills offense for right now. Final bet for me for week number 17 is going to be in the Saturday night game. It's a banger between the Detroit Lions and the Dallas Cowboys. Total right now at FanDuel Sportsbook, 53.5. It was 52.5 yesterday, and I think that movement has gone a bit too far. So I do want to take the under for Cowboys Lions at minus 110. And I say that while acknowledging that I understand why this total is where it is. My model actually does have it above 50, which is kind of nuts, given that the spread here is not all that large. Just again, 53.5, a bit too high. I've got this at 50.2 right now, which is about as high as you can get for a projected non-blowout. It is two good offenses, and both defenses have their flaws. So again, I get it. But there is at least a chance that the Lions get CJ Gardner-Johnson back this week. He was limited in practice all throughout last week, so could get activated off IR for this week. I could also see the Lions being pretty run heavy in this game, given how much the Cowboys have struggled there in recent weeks. Now, I think Jonathan Hankins might be back this week. I think he is a Detroit native, so he has some motivation to get back for this game. So maybe the rush defense for the Cowboys does get better, but I do think the Lions can run the ball on a lot of people right now. So I've got a couple of paths under here, where maybe CJ Gardner-Johnson makes the Lions defense a little bit better. Maybe they go run heavy and keep that clock draining. It's not going to be a fun sweat. I can guarantee you that, given that we're rooting against two very fun offenses on Saturday night and island games, stuff like that. But I do think that a skew toward the under here is proper, given 53.5 is just a big number. And that, I do think that we'll see the Lions give it all they got, both defensively and with that ground game. So I'm very okay taking the under here, despite the fact I understand why the total is as high as it is. So the four bets for me for this week, the Lions, Cowboys under 53.5 minus 110. I like the Bills and Pats over 50.5 at minus 110. I'll take the Packers money line plus 110 at FanDuel Sportsbook, and then a bet on the Falcons, bid on the spread at plus 3 at minus 115, and then some of the money line as well, plus 136 as they take on the Bears on Sunday at Soldier Field in Chicago. So we'll see if we can round out week 17 on a high note here on Sunday. Before we close up shop for today, do got to recap recommendations from last week here on the show. A bit abbreviated for this week because we didn't have a Friday show at JJ Zacharyson. We had no college football last week and no Monday Night Football preview with Ryan Williams. So basically had just my stuff from last Tuesday here on the show. And 2-2 week for me. And the two losses were emphatic losses, but hey, a loss is a loss, regardless of how bad it is. So it doesn't matter too much there. I did have the 49ers -5.5 against the Ravens at -115. That did not go well at all. Did get movement in my favor, as I think that closed at either 6 or 6.5. So the market was on board, but doesn't matter. Does not matter at all, as they lost that game pretty easily. So congrats to the Ravens on a very impressive showing in that one. And we'll see if the 49ers can get the balls to bounce their way in the future. Other loss was another pretty big one. Jets Commanders under 37.5. I had at -105. And those two teams got in a shootout. Touchdown Trevor Siemian leading the Jets to putting up points, obviously not based on him, but some good special teams, good defense, getting that total over. So, hey, again, loss is the loss, regardless how bad it is. And we'll take that for sure. The two wins. I had the Bucs money line at -108. I spent the entire week fretting about whether or not Trevor Lawrence would clear concussion protocol. He did. And that, as a result, the Bucs money line went from, I think they were -136 or so at one point, down to +110, I believe, is where they closed on Sunday. So bad movement against me. And then Lawrence came out and did not play very well at all. Got hurt again in that game. So spent all week thinking that would be the loss, and instead wound up being a win with the Bucs at -108. Other one, similar thing, where the Colts Falcons total went up to 45.5 when Michael Pittman cleared concussion protocol. Out of the under 44.5, went up to 45.5 as Pittman cleared concussion protocol. But then Pittman ruled out on Saturday as he had some symptoms during the flight, which is a massive bummer because you'd ever want to see a player like that go through those kinds of things. Total went back down to 44.5, but it looked pretty high scoring early on. Both teams had touchdowns, I believe, in the first quarter, so that got me worried as well. Wound up finishing with just 39 total points, though, as the Colts offense could not get things going. So under hit at -115, under 44.5 there. So two bets moved in my favor, lost both those. Two bets moved against me, won both those. Exactly how you'd expect things to play out. We'll see what we can do here for week 17, and hopefully the market movement, a better indicator this week, hopefully, than it was last week. That is all that we have here for today on Covering the Spread, but two more awesome shows coming up later on this week. As mentioned on Wednesday, Dr. Ed Feng will be with us to take a look at the college football playoff semifinals and break down what his numbers have to say about those. And also, Ed is with us on Thursday to get you set in full for NFL Week 17. To get those shows as they go live, make sure you're subscribed to Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us on the FanDuel YouTube page and FanDuel TV Plus. Big thank you, as always, to Ryan Williams. Check him out on Twitter at RyanAlexander_W. Be back with us once again next Tuesday. I am on Twitter at Jim Sonis. You can find me on Threads at Jim.Sonis. You can find FanDuel Research on Twitter at FanDuel Research. I want to thank you all for tuning in for today. Good luck to you with your bets across the next couple of days. We'll talk to you once again tomorrow to get you set for the college football playoff semifinals. This has been Covering the Spread right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.